Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to part 8 of my Logic Pro 10 201 course. In the next two videos, I want to talk about drum sampling and sequencing and beat building using both the Ultrabeat drum machine and the new drum machine designer that was added in Logic 10.1. In reality, Drum Machine Designer just reuses Ultrabeat as a multi-output instrument. So if I open up my Drum Machine Designer stack here, you'll see that the very first track is just an Ultrabeat. And that's really all Drum Machine Designer does is it's really just Ultrabeat in disguise. It just takes one Ultrabeat, loads it in multi-output mode, and then makes individual channels for each of those outputs. But on the front end, you're just looking at a different interface, So really, Drum Machine Designer is Ultrabeat in disguise with a new user interface. So in this video, we're going to start with just Ultrabeat, and we're going to bypass Drum Machine Designer altogether. And then in the next video, I'll show you how to sample using Drum Machine Designer as well. So there's two different ways to do it, and it's up to you which way you prefer doing it. So I've got some samples here. I'm going to open up my Finder. Got some audio samples here, and I want to drag these into Ultrabeat and create my own custom drum kit. I will leave a link to download these for free in the video description below, so you can use them to work along with this video and in the next video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a new software instrument here. I'm just going to double click, and I'll just call this Ultrabeat, and then I'll load Ultrabeat as the instrument here. So down here, Ultrabeat drum synth. Now, I'm going to load this in stereo right now, but later on we'll load this in multi-output mode. So I'll come back to that in just a moment. Now you can see all of your voices over here, and they all synchronize with the keyboard. This note, bottom note right here is C1. So that's your starting note for your kick drum. There's all this synthesizer stuff out here. I really don't necessarily need to synthesize a drum sound. I want to load in pre-existing drum samples that I have. So I'm not going to be using most of this, but there's a few fundamental synthesis things that we have to understand even when using samples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up a preset that's called, it's under drum kits. It's called the drag and drop samples kit. Now, if you don't see the drag and drop samples kit, as well as all these other presets, you probably haven't downloaded your full sound library, so make sure that you do that. So what this does is it gives us just a blank drum kit. So no matter what I play on my keyboard, I get no sound. And if I click on the keys, I still get no sound. So I'm just going to move this up here. And I'm going to open up that sample window here. And I'm going to start with my two kick drums here. So I've got one that's like a hard, tight kick and one that's a soft kick. So what you can do is you can drag and drop any audio sample that's WAV or AIFF format into this sample loading area here. So all you do is you select the key that you want to load this on, the sample note that you want to load this on, and you drag and drop the sample into this area right here. So now when I press C1 here, I get that kick drum. Now it's a little loud. You can see we're clipping by 0.6 dB. So I can do a couple things. I can pull the master output down up here for the whole instrument, or I can pull down the individual channel volume. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull this down a few dB to make sure I don't clip. Then I can double click on this and give this a name. Now what I can do is I can click on the next sample. I'll just call this soft kick, and I'll load in my next kick. So now on C1, I have my tight, hard kick and my soft kick on C sharp. Two different samples. Now, in my original drum beat, I had my kick drum, my hard kick on C1, and I had the snare on D1 and the clap sound on D sharp 1. So I'm going to make sure I follow that as I load in my samples here. So the next one I'm going to load in is my snare drum. I have two of them. I have snare impact and snare tight. Yeah, impact is like an explosive snare. So on D1, I'm going to load in the snare tight. On E flat or D sharp 1, I'm going to load in my clap. And on E, I'm going to load in my snare impact. And then I'll just name these. So snare tight, clap, and impact. Now these are probably going to be a little loud as well. Clap, I can pull that down a couple dB. That impact snare is going to be really loud, I can tell already. There we go. Now, I also have some hi-hats that I wanna load in, and I actually have 3 different hi-hats. I've hat 1, 2, and 3 here. And I'm gonna load these in on F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. Those are just the normal notes that you would normally find hi-hats on. So there's hat 1, hat 2, and hi-hat 3 on A sharp up there. And I'll just rename these as well. I'll just call this hat 1, hat 2, hat 3. Okay, so I've got all of my snares and kicks loaded in. I do have this sub kick though. Let's put that on the C above the low C. I'll put it up here. So I'll just call this sub kick. We'll load that in. Let's make sure that's not too loud. Yeah, it's clipping quite a bit there. And then my 3 hats. Perfect. Okay, so the only thing I have to load in that's left are my 2 crash cymbals here. I have a 15-inch Avitas A Custom and a 17-inch Sabian's AAX. Both of these were actually samples I made with my drum kit. So I'm going to load these on C sharp and D sharp up here. Again, if you're wondering why I'm loading these on certain keys, it's more because I'm kind of sort of following the GM drum kit. That's the General MIDI drum kit, where the drums go in a certain order. Technically on D sharp up here, that's more of like a ride cymbal, and then the crash is up on E, but I'm very loosely following it. So all of these ones that I've named, I'm gonna leave them alone, but the ones that I haven't used, I like to delete the name on them, or actually I just double click and press spacebar. So it comes up with as a blank name, and then roll the volume down. And normally these notes here would be like toms. So I don't have any toms in this song at all. So I'm just gonna hit spacebar on all these to get rid of the name, and then roll out the volume bar. It's not a requirement. It's just something I like to do because then it just helps me to stay a little bit more organized. Let's roll down the crash volume. So let's play through this. I got kick, soft kick, snare tight, clap, impact, my 3 hats, my sub kick, my crash, and my second crash. Now, something that's really noticeable, especially on the crashes, is that when you release the key, the sound stops. Now, typically with drum samples, you want these to be loaded in as one-shots. A one-shot is a sample that plays from front to end regardless of how long you hold the key down. Now, in some samplers, there's simply just a button that you press that loads the sample in as a one-shot. In other samplers, you have to work with the volume envelope. So similar to the ES2 in the last 2 videos, where we could pull the release time up on the envelope to make the sound last longer, we can do the same in a sampler to make the sample last longer. So down here on the bottom right is our amplitude or amplifier envelope number 4. And it's nice enough when you load the drag and drop samples kit, it's nice enough to already pull up envelope 4, which is automatically paired to volume or amplitude. So this this envelope is a little different than the ones that we saw in the ES2. The envelope is actually like graphically looks like an envelope, and you can adjust the different stages, and you can adjust the decay, and you can adjust the attack time and all that. It's a bit different than the the 4 fader look in the ES2. So, and then this last point here is the release time, and you can pull this all the way out, and it'll go up to 10,000 milliseconds, which is 10 seconds. So now when I press that crash cymbal, I'm not holding down the key anymore. It's just ringing out in full up to 10 seconds. So rather than messing around with it like I just did a minute ago, all you have to do is click on the sample, make sure you're on envelope 4, grab the release, and pull it all the way out. I'm going to uncheck this zoom option here. There we go. Go to the next one, pull the release all the way out, and just go down all these samples and pull the release out. So let's play these now I've pulled the envelopes out on all of them. Some of them aren't really that noticeable, but like the impact snare, I don't have to hold the key down anymore. So notice that with my hi-hats, I have 2 of them that are kind of like short hats, 1 and 2. And then 3 is like a long open hat. And notice if I play it and then play another hat right after it, it overlaps the other hat. So typically with hi-hat sounds in drum kits, whether it be an electronic kit or an acoustic kit, you want your open hi-hat to choke when you play another instance of a closed hat. So what you can do is you can set up a trigger group over here. And what you can do is on all 3 of these, you set this to group 1, or whatever available group you have. So these are all set to group 1. And then for the trigger mode, you just keep it on single. And all this means is that for this group of hi-hats here, only 1 note can be played at a time. So it actually chokes the open hi-hat when I play a closed hi-hat. Now I could just duplicate down the pattern from the other track that I was using, and I could just, use this this pattern. And actually for the hi-hat pattern, I am going to use that MIDI data, but I want to show you another way to program your MIDI sequences within Ultrabeat. And what you're going to do is on the bottom right here, there's a button that says Full View. When you click on this, what this does is it pulls up a step sequencer where you can program in your beats right within Ultrabeat without even using piano roll at all. So what you can do is if you press this play button here, it starts and stops the playback of Ultrabeat, just Ultrabeat. It doesn't play back your session. And then if you press stop, it just stops the sequencer. So just be careful to not press spacebar to listen to your beat, because you're going to actually hear the beat along with everything that's going on in your session. So spacebar will start and stop the session and the beat up here. Pressing the stop and start button here will just stop and start Ultrabeat. So if you right click, you can add notes every downbeat. You can add notes every upbeat if you like. So you just right click and choose add every upbeat. I'll just press play here. Looks like I'm clipping, so I'm going to pull the master down just a little bit. And you can also just click to manually add in notes. Right now, we're looking at a 16th note resolution. So we're looking at 2 measures of 16th notes. Now, you can change the resolution down here to whatever you like, but if the song's in 4/4, I typically find myself just using 16th notes. What Ultrabeat is not good for is it's not good for building complex patterns like the hi-hats that we created before with the brush tool, where you're jumping back and forth between 8ths, 16ths, and triplet values. It doesn't work well like that. It doesn't work at all like that. You have to pick a straight value like 8, 16, or 32, or a triplet value like 124 or 12. So there are some limitations to what you can do in its step sequencer. So I just like to let the sequencer play through and create a pattern on the fly. Once you've created a pattern that you like, you can import this into your song by clicking this little button right here. It says drag to arrange window. You can click and drag and import this into your session. And then you can work with it just like any other MIDI region. You can open it up in the piano roll editor. You can loop it. You can use the Command R function to repeat it. You can join them together, you can trim them, whatever you need to do, you can work with it like any other MIDI region. One thing you can do is you can create multiple patterns. So this could just be pattern one of several. If you come down to this menu here, you can select a pattern number. These are essentially like stored patterns. So right now we're on pattern one. So if I go over to pattern two, you'll see that I have a blank slate. Now, the ones that say SQ next to them are patterns that have a sequence on them. But let's say that pattern two, I want it to be pretty similar to pattern one. So what you can do is go back to pattern one, right click, choose copy, then go to number two, right click, and choose paste. And then alter this one. So maybe I don't want a crash cymbal on this one, and I don't want a sub kick on this one. So then what you could do is you can go back to pattern one, drag that one in, go to pattern two, drag that one in, and then you could build a 3 and a 4 or whatever you want to do. One thing that you have to absolutely make sure that you do is when you're playing your sequence from out here in your arrange window, make absolutely sure that you turn the sequencer off in Ultrabeat. If you don't, you're just going to hear both of these play back at the same time. So watch what happens if I hit play over here. There's no region here, but my sequencer is on. So you have to be mindful of that. Otherwise, your sequencer is just going to keep playing on and on and on forever, and it's going to overlap playback with the MIDI regions that you've dragged out here. Now, one last thing you can do with Ultrabeat is you can load it in multi-output mode. So if you click on your Ultrabeat insert here and go to multi-output, what this does is it reloads Ultrabeat in multi-output mode. So to the right of each voice or each sample in Ultrabeat, you see this output tab here. And right now it says sub 1. If you click on that, you can choose different subgroups for each one. So I'm going to choose kick as subgroup 1, main. The soft kick will also be main. And also my sub kick will be on main. So the kicks are all going to be together. Then for the snares, so your snare tight, I'm going to choose 2. For the clap, it'll be 2, and the impact, it'll be 2 as well. For the hi-hat, this will be 3. So all 3 of these hi-hats are going to be 3. And then for the crashes, I'll put this on 4. So what I'm doing is I'm breaking up my drum kit into multiple channels. If I open the mixer here and I take a look at my Ultrabeat channel strip in the mixer, notice there's this little plus sign down here. Let me hit that a few times. 2, 3, 4. So here's Ultrabeat channel 1 and 2, Ultrabeat 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. And look at the input tab up here. So what this does is it splits up the Ultrabeat into a multi-output instrument. So remember how I said the first channel was the kicks, the second channel was the snares, the third channel was the hi-hats, and the last channel was cymbals? Watch what happens when I play this back. I've got just the kick on 1 and 2. Just the snare and clap on 3 and 4. Just the hi-hats on 5 and 6. And just the cymbals on 7 and 8. Now you could break this up to have every single sample on a different channel. I'm just doing it, for simplicity here, I'm kind of grouping like instruments together. But what this does is it gives you individual mix control over each of these. For example, if I want my cymbals to be a bit brighter, I could maybe scoop out some of the low end with a filter and then increase the high end with the high end shelf in the channel EQ. But only the cymbals are going to be affected by this, not the other channels. Or maybe just in general, the hi-hats are too loud. I can pull those down. Or maybe I want to add like a delay to the hi-hats to give them a bit more of like an ambient effect. So that's how you can use the multi-output mode in Ultrabeat. And that pretty much wraps up this video. That's how you can use Ultrabeat for drum sampling, for drum sequencing, and in multi-output mode so you can individually mix each of those sample voices that you dragged in. If you like this video, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. You can check me out on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on Patreon if you'd like to make a monthly donation to the channel. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.